Have you ever got stuck on your improvised flute playing and ended up playing the same melody all of the time and keep coming back around to that melody all of the time? Well, don't panic, it happens to all of us. I've been playing flute now for 4 or 5 years. It still happens to me, and in fact just last week or the week before I was trying to make a flute video just displaying what I'd made and putting that live on Facebook. And I really couldn't come up with something that slightly deviated from my normal pattern, my normal routine. And so here is a few tips of how we can combat that and just broaden, really, essentially, just broaden our improvised flute playing. Now, there's a few things I'm going to share with you today, and they're all good techniques. They're all good tips to just throw different things into the mix and to shake your flute playing up a little bit. But there's also some considerations, really, when it comes to structure, how you structure your flute playing, even though it's improvised. And I think the best and the easiest thing to kind of describe there is think of your playing like perhaps a song. So what have we got in a song? If we forget the bridge, which is like between chorus and verse, in the latter stages of the song, and just keep it simple. We have an intro, don't we, at the beginning? So we have an intro, then we'll roll into perhaps our improv, and then we want to shake things up a little bit and maybe put in a different sound, and more on how to produce a different sound on the flute to your normal improv shortly. But we could call one of those like our improv, and that new sound that we break away into. That could almost be the chorus and the verse, if you like, and then we tail out at the end. So you've got 4 distinct parts there, and in the middle we can bounce between one and the other, chorus and verse, chorus and verse. It just shakes things up, and it adds more layers, and it adds more dynamics to our flute playing. So an intro, let's just go through some of that, and we'll just go through the structure and what that might look like first, and then I'll show you some new sort of exercises and things that we can do and we can practice that will just actually shake up our playing completely. So an intro can be simple, can just be it's just a bit of drama. It doesn't even have to make sense. It doesn't have to sound anything like or even go with your improv. It doesn't really have to make sense even, you know. It's just an alert. It's a call. Now, how that feels and how you're visualizing when you're doing any of your flute playing is entirely up to you. But I tend to visualize landscapes and scenarios if I'm not like in connection with some of my internal guides and just actually listening to them and where they want me to go on the flute, perhaps in a ceremonial context. Then I'm kind of visualizing stories, maybe, and maybe I'm telling a story with my flute at times, you know. That's one of the ways that I like to play. So you've got your little introduction there, and then maybe you want to throw in something like, I don't know, what can we go? We can go like this for the first verse or the chorus. Something like that, and it does not have to be the same all of the time. I know we're kind of structured, but it is improvised flute playing. This is to give us more sound, so it doesn't have to be exactly the same. But we want to step away from that because that's what we've perhaps reverted to in our playing. We've tried to go off and do something different, but we'll come back to that sound that we're becoming overly familiar with perhaps, and we want to broaden from that point. So we're going to call what I've just performed on the flute there that sticking point. That's why I keep playing that. Well, let's break it up then with a completely different sound. A completely different sound that doesn't even necessarily have to flow with that sound. It can almost be, right, I'm stopping that now and I'm going to go on to this. So that could be something similar. It could be shorter as well. What I'm doing there is another technique called call and answer. So I'm calling on the higher part of the flute, and it doesn't matter what part of the flute, you can just, you're imagining that you're creating a call, maybe two birds, for example. I don't know. You know, a bird over there who's calling out, and this bird is answering that call. Again, doesn't have to be exactly the same all of the time, but it's calling and answering. You've got a call and an answer. You're answering the initial call of the flute, and it can just breaks up firstly the improv, and it just gives a completely different sound. It's a good way to explore new sounds just as a technique on its own. But we're going to call this the verse of our song in the context of how we're explaining this and breaking it into that format. So we've got the intro, we had the more harmonious part of the song, the chorus, and now we've got the verse. We're going to run through that with the intro, quite a clear intro. We'll roll into these two sounds, and we'll bounce those off of each other. We'll see how much improv that I do, but you'll get a clearer idea of what I'm talking about and how it sounds when it's all together. So here we go. So there you go. That's just one way of playing with that. It's quite difficult for me. I'm trying to keep it brief rather than go on to a full escapade, but you could see there's a clear introduction, which can be drama, can be as dramatic as you like. So really big impact on your introduction. Then go off on your normal flute playing. And no doubt you'll end up in the same place as we all do, but then try and break that up with something new and go through and bounce from one to the other maybe. So other ways of creating new sounds when perhaps you're looking for that something new initially. Well, we've given you one and we've used one as our example, being call and answer. Let me check my notes here. Of two different ways. Okay, so another way that you could shake up your flute playing if you're looking for something new, a new sound entirely, is I think when we learn to play the flute, we start here and we go up, the scale and we go down the scale, and it kind of makes sense to land in the same place as where you started. It makes sense for whoever's listening and for us as players as well, just to end up. We end up back in the same place. So that kind of makes sense. But what happens then if you start in an entirely different place on the flute and you say, well, I'm going to start there at the opposite end of the scale, or I'm going to start in the middle and then I'm going to land back in the middle. And when you start to try and just go, that will set you off on a new little journey on the flute, because you can't land and you can't end and you can't get into the same cycle as you normally do. So it shakes your playing up, and you'll come up with something new, and perhaps that something new can become your verse or your chorus, or just something that you can flick to however you're playing in an improvised manner. So let's try something starting here in the middle of the flute. So you've done your intro or whatever, and then you're going to start and you're always going to finish in the middle rather than at the top or at the bottom. So here we go. Wish me luck. See, it's pulling me out of that old pattern, and I'm like, oh, I've got to finish in the middle. I've got to make myself go there. So it changes the end and therefore the sound of where you're even navigating towards. So starting in the middle. See, it's forcing me round in a circle, fair enough, and it might not sound the best, but it's forcing a different pattern into my playing, and I'm discovering new things. And then I might, at the very end of that, take it back down to the bottom again to end. So just to tail it off, but it just gives you a different point of the flute to actually aim for, and there it will throw a different or a new melody to you. So let's try that then at the top of the flute as well and see where that takes us. So we'll always have to finish at the top of the flute. See, it's given me a different sound, a different place to pause at least within my improv, just by forcing myself to finish at the top end of the flute. It's given me just that different direction, that different thought process within my real-time improvised kind of playing. So you can then just incorporate that even into your flute playing. And I know at the times actually I've decided to completely change the finish or the end of my flute playing and decided to finish at the top quite randomly, and that again gives you another sound. So imagine you're used to finishing down at the bottom, and that's the end of your song perhaps, But you could be mid-playing bringing just something unique into your playing, shaking things up. It's really recommended, even if you don't feel like you're getting somewhere. It gets you to explore a different dynamic within your playing, and just to finish and to begin in different places of the flute. Shaking things up is so important when we're getting stuck with our playing. So one more little thing that can really help when we're getting stuck with our improv is just to try and put everything into one phrase, and just to come up with a one phrase wonder. And it's just a bit of a fun thing to do as well. I may have said this in my previous videos, I'm not entirely sure. But how much can you get out of one breath? And can we make a whole song out of one breath? Well, yes, of course we can. It's a phrase, but can we start and finish within one phrase, a one phrase wonder? There you go. It just helps you explore as many dynamics and as many tricks that are at your disposal, like sliding and popping and all of that sort of stuff. We're trying to cram as many things as we can as possible into one entire phrase, and it's helped by the fact that actually this is a really nice flute to do that on, because of the back pressure of it, and it's easy to do longer phrases with. So yeah, try it, see what you think, give me some feedback. Have you ever thought of structuring your improvised flute playing as a song before? There is another thing as well, and I think that call and answer, for me, it feels more ceremonial. And when I say ceremonial, it hasn't escaped me that, indeed, any flute playing could be regarded as a ceremonial, played in a ceremonial context. But for me, ceremonial flute playing feels a little bit different than melody, in that it is a bit more repetitive. And don't be afraid of that. That's my parting message to you, is don't be afraid of it being a little bit repetitive, and actually narrow down and intentionally make it even more repetitive, like that call and answer, for example, because it's less melodic perhaps, but it's more repetitive, it's more trance-like. It can help people that are in perhaps a circle or drumming circle or sound healing event or whatever it is you might be playing at, and it can help people drop into a more meditative state, and can really help them. And I know as a flute player, that if I'm there late at night, I don't really try and aim for new things late at night. I might pick up a slightly lower keyed flute. This is F, so it's kind of mid-tone, but because it's just mellow that time of night, you want to move a little bit slower, and just being a little bit repetitive with your flute, even in short sections, can help yourself as a player actually drop into more vision, more of a meditative kind of trance-like state, if you like. So I would encourage that as well. So go the opposite way. Yes, the video is to try and broaden your overall sound and to bring more elements to it, and to help prompt that within you, to explore different parts of your flute, but also go the other way around and try and narrow the whole field of sound in order to achieve more trance-like states and such things. So again, back to that call and answer and how that can help drop me playing into, because I switch off and I'm just going with whatever I'm visualizing inside. So from the trance back into a melody. See what you think. Have a go. Let me know. Next week, I think I'm going to touch on the subject of actually my passion for flute, my passion for world flutes, where I see all of that passion leading me to in future, but actually prompted by somebody's question a couple of weeks or so ago, which was in my beginners tutorials for flute playing. So if you're maybe searching for such a thing and you haven't seen those videos yet, that's a really good way to explore just the basic fundamental skill and some tips and tricks that I might have mentioned throughout this video, but that's where to start. There's a 5 video series of how to begin a beginner's tutorials for flute playing. But yes, where did my passion for flute come from in the first place is what I'm going to explore and just speak into. It's quite the story, so hopefully you'll tune in next week for that. But yeah, thank you for joining me. If you've got any questions about anything I've said this week, please do let me know. Sending lots of love and speak to you soon.